side angle. Straight on. I mean, that gloss black goes perfectly with the gloss black outer rings of these ice blocks. I think it looks perfect. Hello my SAAB friends, today we're going to attach a Hirsch replica diffuser on the back of my Laser Red 9.3. It will go along perfectly with this Hirsch spoiler, and obviously this is just sitting on here like such, just kind of as a general mock-up, but this is what we have. I ended up picking this up off of eBay roughly 2 or 3 months ago. I think it came from Lithuania. There's multiple variations of these, but this is obviously fiberglass, if you can't tell from the fibers there. And then I don't know as far as coating what they have on it, but quality seems pretty good. There's a couple issues that I'm not 100% thrilled about, like right in there, but with anything with fiberglass and molding, you're gonna have some issues. So my main thing is, hopefully this thing is not bent to any way, shape, or form to where it's gonna cause issues putting it in place of the original one. But just setting it down here, it seems like everything is straight mounting wise. Looks like there's multiple spots where we'll have to rivet all the way throughout here, and I can tell right there we're gonna have to remove the original reflectors back there and there. This is kind of interesting. I don't think the original one is this far down. Full disclaimer, I've never installed one of these on a SAAB before. I have had friends install them on a non-aero. Pretty much just have the bumper that has, like, say, the hidden exhaust, or it has like single exhaust. Doesn't have this detachable diffuser, but if you go that route, it will take a lot of modification, and quite honestly, in my opinion, it's really not worth it because you risk destroying your factory bumper. But crawling up underneath here, you can see some of the rivets that we will have to drill out. Got one on each corner, a slew of them underneath. I may have to remove this bumper. Hopefully we do not, but I'm going to start by drilling out those original rivets. Got a trim removal tool. We'll try to knock this reflector out of here. Made my first mistake on the other one. Looks like there's not as much double-sided tape as I thought would be on these, and it actually has these clips. So let me show you underneath how we can properly remove it instead of just ramming a trim removal tool in here and prying this thing off, because you're going to end up breaking a clip like that. So underneath the vehicle, you can sort of get an idea of where the clips are. We're going to get a very long flat blade screwdriver and push in on each one of these tabs. So we're going to focus on pushing in this one and then getting this out and then go to the other one. So there's only 2 of these tabs that we need to push in. Got it. Alright, that one turned out a wee bit better. First rivet is out, so I initially started with a very large drill bit, I don't know, say 1/2 inch, and it's rather tricky because you have the big end, you have a washer on the back side, and then kind of like a plastic center. So the idea is to take your drill bit, drill through the center, hit this plastic piece, that way it can just kind of break away so you don't damage this diffuser, or worse, the actual bumper. So I stepped it down to a much smaller drill bit, probably 1/4 inch. So from here on out, I'm going to attempt to remove the rest of the rivets with this 1/4 inch bit. So I literally drilled out 8 rivets, 1 on each side behind the reflector, 1 on each side underneath the outside of the exhaust tips, and then another 4 underneath. So I think we are good to just kind of wiggle this loose. I don't know what else would be holding this in, but we'll find out here shortly. Okay. Well, definitely broke some clips off the original diffuser here, so this may be going in the bin. So after messing with some fitment off camera for a little bit, I realized it's going to be so much easier to remove this rear bumper. So off camera, did a little work. There's a 10mm bolt here on the arrows, 10mm bolt here. That releases this lower section of the rear fascia. And then on each side of the wheel well, there is a 8mm bolt up here, another one right there, and a third one right underneath here, and that releases each side section. And we just need to tug on this to release the clips. Loosens that. We'll do the same on the other side. Taillights actually have to come out. Not that big of a deal. There's 3 10mm bolts on the back side. 1, 2, and 3. Wiggle this out. Move an electrical connector. Comes out like that. Have the bumper draped over my official stand here in my workshop, and quite honestly the fitment of this diffuser is rather trash, but quite honestly I expected it. It's definitely bowed in where these tabs are, and then it's a bit too short. So this side it's almost locked in there, and this side you can tell it's off a ways. But I'm thinking what I need to do, have the tabs locked in as best as possible, push this down, drill the holes and secure it with the hardware, and then kind of stretch it into this seam, and then definitely do 1 if not 2 in each reflector recess here. I'm kind of afraid it's going to scratch easily, but we'll see. The original diffuser over here is more of a matte black. I kind of want to go with the gloss black around the ice blocks. Obviously the outers are not installed because I had to remove them to take the bumper out, but I think that's why I'm going to leave this more gloss black to match the ice block taillight surround. So as far as hardware goes, I actually just ran to my local Home Depot and I picked up a bunch of bolts. Originally I thought I was going to rivet it, but I don't think that's going to hold. 1/8 by 1 inch. They're not exactly perfect in there. They're kind of like a fender washer, but it should distribute the load once you tighten these down. Now for the outers, because it's going to be more exposed, I got these black ones I actually already had, M5 by 0.8. Only thing is I didn't have any lock washers for that, so I picked up a 2-pack of those. So unfortunately I wasn't able to get these in just standard black, so those will kind of be hidden underneath. I may spray them anyways, but for the main ones that you'll see, that's where I'm using those M5 by 0.8. Before we get too far, we need to figure out what to do. They're off in the distance right there. This one I already removed, but that's actually where the 2 10mm bolts fasten this lower bumper to the underside of the rear. This actually pops out very easily. You just take needle nose pliers and you pinch these together, work your way around, and it eventually pops out. Now why it's important to focus on that right now is because you can see how they molded this. It's just one continuous piece. So if we screw this on as is, well, unfortunately this bottom section of the bumper is just going to be loose because we need the 2 10mm bolts to be fastened. So a trick I learned actually with drywall is with something like a hole saw, just run it in reverse and it won't be as aggressive. So I think that's going to be really important when it comes to this fiberglass, because if we're running it forward, this is actually a wood bit, so the teeth are a little bit more spread apart, so there's more chance for it to bite and then pretty much just shred the fiberglass. So we're going to run this in reverse and take it slow. Alright, not bad. Definitely wear a mask. And for my OCD friends out there just like myself, yes, I know this one is on the inside, this one is on the outside. It's just kind of how they space this and where these are mounted. Ideally, you'd probably want to be right here, but there's no sense in destroying this piece that goes down here, because that actually is what structurally holds this together underneath. So definitely manageable to get the bolt in from there, and this one should be perfect. Now we're ready to put this piece back in. Quite honestly, you really don't need to take it out. I took it out just in case I had to trace in behind here to use the Dremel, but the hole saw actually worked out perfectly. So really no need to take this out, but definitely don't want to forget to put it back in. So I have all the tabs locked into place at the top. I'm pushing this down to create tension on this because this is kind of buckled a little bit up in here. So I'm going to worry about the sides after I fasten these, but first I'm going to screw these 4 bottom holes in and work my way to the ends. Got the bolt, big washer, we'll feed it through. Other big washer on the back side, and the nylon lock nut. Here's the diffuser now mounted. Nothing lines up whatsoever, but I highly suggest putting the tabs in the front, pulling it downwards, and affixing these lower bolts first, sandwich with washers as best as possible. Here you can see where I did the hole saw to make room to get in there for the 10 mil. Lines up pretty good, but I have the 246 bolts down here. The other one's right here. Just not enough room to do a washer. Probably should have did like a small washer, not one of the big ones. Didn't do a washer here, but I did do a washer on the back side. Biggest problem is the fact that this thing is bowed inwards this way, but then also at an arc. So right now it's kind of putting some pressure here, so I wish there was like another spot here to do another bolt. But what I'm hoping is once it's in the vehicle and then this gets mounted. I'll actually push it down, and then it brings that up tighter, and there's less pressure on there. But I won't know for a fact until I actually bolt this up to the car. But overall, I'm fairly pleased with it. I think it's going to look really good in this gloss black once installed. And I think I'm going to go ahead and spray these real quick. I don't know that it's going to be real visible, but I know that it's going to be under there. And I imagine after one winter, these things will rust up. So here's where we're at. I actually cleaned up that little booger that was hanging in this exhaust well here. Just took the Dremel, ground it down a little bit, taped it off, sprayed it with some matte black, and I shot these washers and bolt heads as well. These outside ones are obviously already black like previously mentioned, but if you're wondering how exactly I painted these while affixed to the bumper, well, a little secret that I started doing here is I actually take one of these washers, I place it on here, trace it out, cut the center out, and then you just set it over it. And then I usually lay like a rag kind of around there to prevent overspray, but that gives you kind of a rough idea. You spritz it real quick, a couple coats of paint later, and while it's not perfect, being under the vehicle you're never really going to notice, and being black, it's going to mask in much better. Now ready to reattach the reflectors. This is the broken one, so I added a little bit of double-sided tape on here, and I don't think it'll be too much of an issue with this panhead bolt. I thought about drilling a small relief in here, but I think with the tolerances it'll be perfectly fine. This is the non-broken one, but I still added some double-sided tape just in case. I don't really ever plan on taking this stuff off. Certainly not perfect. It is bowed a little bit, like I mentioned earlier. Right here it's kind of cupped forward, and what that is doing is kind of causing a gap, but honestly you don't even notice until you're like up close right here. But ideally this would be up a bit closer, but how the tabs are, they don't really lock in place. You may be able to add like some double-sided tape to help that out, but quite honestly it's not going anywhere whatsoever. Overall fitment is decent, and it's kind of to be expected for what you pay for price-wise compared to, say, an original Hirsch diffuser. So I honestly can't complain. Mounting underneath turned out pretty good. If I had to do it over again, I would move these hole saw cuts probably about an inch or so, mainly because it's rather difficult to get in here. I had to use a 1/4 inch driving a 10 mil, but it's so difficult because you're actually coming at an angle. So if this was an inch more rearward, you would definitely be at a better angle, but I was still able to get in there, and it looks better than cutting a massive rectangle in here. The side angle, straight on. I mean, that gloss black goes perfectly with the gloss black outer rings of these ice blocks. I think it looks perfect compared to the matte black smooth factory diffuser that is on the Arrows. Overall, I'm pretty happy for what you pay for this thing and what you get. Not 100% perfect, but that's what you get when you buy some fiberglass products that are based off of, say, an expensive version like a Hirsch and have been copied for many, many years now. So there's going to be variations with it, and especially with fiberglass, they're never perfect. But with a little tweaking, some bolts and finesse, it worked out pretty good. So that's going to wrap it up on today's video of installing this knockoff Hirsch diffuser. Overall, I am pretty pleased with the outcome of this. Yes, it was somewhat of a struggle. If I had to do it over again, a couple points I mentioned, like I said, move that hole saw cut a little more rearward. That way you can get a better angle whenever you're reattaching those 10mm bolts underneath the diffuser there. And lastly, the struggle from the beginning is trying to make this install work with the bumper still on it. take the extra time. There's 3 10mm bolts on each of these outer taillights. Those pop off. Obviously, there's an electrical connector that comes off pretty easily. There's going to be 3 8mm bolts, one here, and one down there on each side of the rear wheel wells on this bumper, and then the 2 10mm bolts underneath the diffuser, and then pop the trunk open and this bumper comes off. So because I made an attempt to do this install with the bumper on there, I ended up breaking a couple clips on my original diffuser, as well as this left reflector, one of the clips, but one clip's fine, some double-sided tape, and that's not going anywhere. But definitely take the extra time, remove this rear bumper, and it should be relatively struggle-free. So if this video helped you out, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing. I have a ton of SAAB stuff out there, motorcycle stuff, and just all around how-to stuff. So with that being said, I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you friends next time.